Tonight's class is in the memory of Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yosef. The Shemach have an elevation. Let's settle down so we can start. Come. Okay. So I'm going to start not with a joke, but with a question. That the more I think about this question, the more I'm convinced of the answer, although, I didn't actually research it. One of the most famous characters in the entire Torah is Aharon the Kohen Gadol, Aharon the high priest, right? Familiar with the Torah, you know that this week's Torah portion, which talks about the story of the Yom Kippur service, who was officiated by Aharon, the high priest, the older brother of Moses. We know him, very famous. Can you think of anything famous that Aharon said? What's the most famous thing that Aharon said? Yeah, very good. Can you think of anything that Aharon said? I asked my mother-in-law this today. I had a bunch of family over before they leave back, and I asked, can you think of anything that Aharon actually said? At first they were starting to argue, and they can't think of, something he said.
About Moshe, because Moshe he wanted his brother, even though he was younger, to be the leader of the Jewish people, but Moshe didn't refuse, but he refused.
So we're going to talk about that verse when Moshe, when Aharon gave the rights of being the priest, the prophet to his brother. We'll talk about it. You'll see the verse, but I'll just jump ahead for a second because you're bringing it up. Nowhere does Aharon actually say to Moshe, you should be the guy in charge and I'll be your spokesman. God says to Moshe that your brother will be your spokesman, etc. Aharon, he says, God says to Moshe, your brother Aharon will speak for you and he will be your representative and he will talk for you. But in the entire story of all of the 10 plagues, you don't actually, I have to go look at maybe the Chumash and see. We don't find that Aharon is actually speaking to Moses, to Pharaoh. We see that Moshe spoke to Pharaoh. We should go look at the Chumash. But that's the way the story goes. We don't actually see Aharon talking. In fact, the most famous verse that is associated with Aharon, one of the most famous verses in the Torah, and for sure the most famous verse about Aharon, as our Rebbetzin Vivi already said, is a verse on the day when 2 of Aaron's 4 sons pass away. We already discussed the story not too long ago at great length. It was on the day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, a day of tremendous divine revelation, tremendous, God was revealed to the Jewish people. They had been forgiven for their sin. And at that moment, Nadav and Avihu are so excited, they're so enthralled, that what happens? They run into the temple with unauthorized incense. As a result of that, a fire comes forth from God and they are killed. And what happens after they are killed? What's the next thing that we're told in the Torah? The Torah tells us as follows. Let's open up our text number 1, right over here. I'm opening it up on the screen as well. It says chapter 10, verse number 3. Then Moses said to Aharon, this is what the Lord spoke when he said, I will be sanctified through those near to me, and before all the people I will be glorified. What that verse means, it's a class of, we talked about this already in the previous class, but basically Moshe is saying to his brother that your sons were the closest ones of God, that God chose to be his divine example, to be his close ones. But what's the next words? Vayidom Aharon. And Aharon was silent. Very, very famous words. The most famous words of Aharon are that he was silent. Aharon says nothing. The next verse after this is that Moshe tells Mishael and Eltzafan, the 2 nephews of Aharon, that even though you want to be part of the celebrations, take your 2 cousins, take them out to be buried, because their brothers cannot leave because today's the inauguration, etc. The point is that what does Aharon say? Nothing. Aharon says absolutely nothing. And so the takeaway over here, and what we're going to discuss in tonight's class, is that if you want to understand the character of Aharon, if you want to get into the meat in the Bible of who is Aharon, what defines the personality, the character, the identity of Aharon, the Kohen Gadol, it is not about what he said. His life is not defined by anything he said, rather by what he did. Exactly. The life of Aaron is not what he said, it's about what he did. It's what he did. And if you think about it, we don't know anything he said. And yet he is a part of every single major story of Jewish history. Every single part of the story, Aaron is there. I understand that Aaron didn't speak. Aaron spoke to Pharaoh. Aaron spoke. We read in this week's Torah reading how he made all the confessions for all the Jewish people. He prayed on behalf of the Jewish people. He blessed the Jewish people. Many times he spoke. But we don't ever, yes, but we don't find anywhere that he's not defined by the words he says. That's why the words he says don't actually make it into the text of the Torah. He is defined by what he does, by his actions. And therefore, he's such a central figure in all of the Jewish story. In every part of our whole Exodus, he's there. In some ways, more than Moshe. He's the Kohen Gadol. He's in the Mishkan. He's doing all the services, all the sacrifices. But it's all about what he did, and not about what he says. Now, with that premise in mind, we can go. Yeah, first of all, we can live about ourselves, and we will, God willing, end the class talking about ourselves. But now, with this premise, we can revisit all of the major stories in Aaron's life. And you'll see in each and every major story in which the major stories of Aaron's life, you will see how he does not speak, how it's not about him. It's not about his moment in the spotlight, his moment to make his voice heard and to make sure everyone is aware of his presence. But in each and every circumstance, it's not about him. It's not about his noise, his attention. It's about those that he cares about and what he's doing for others. Peacemaker. Okay. So, why is it that Aaron doesn't care about his own honor and his own glory, and he spends his whole life doing for others and being for others and caring for others? He's humble. Okay. He is humble. But we don't find that as a description of Aaron. We find it about Moshe. How do the rabbis tell us as a description? When the rabbis want to tell you who is Aaron, so the rabbis tell us, I'm going to go share the screen again to read the second text. The second text is from Pirkei Avot. It's actually this week's chapter of Pirkei Avot. We have a custom during the 6 weeks, the 6 Shabbatot, between Pesach and Shavuot, to study a different chapter of Ethics of Our Fathers. This week's chapter is chapter 1. And in chapter 1, which is this week's chapter of Avos, there's Mishnah 12, that says as follows. Hillel and Shammai received from their teachers. Hillel would say, meaning they received. Hillel had a statement he would say. What was his statement? Havei mitalmidav shel Aharon. Be of the disciples of Aaron. What's Aaron? Ohev shalom, loving peace. Virodev shalom, pursuing peace, because you can love peace and not pursue it. I love peace, but I don't actually get out of my chair to do anything to try and create peace. So you gotta love peace. No. Pursuing peace means I want it bad enough I'm gonna actually put my neck on the line and I'm actually gonna extend myself for somebody else. Ohev et habriot, loving the creations. Here they translate it very nicely. They translate it as the public. The word briot literally means creatures. It doesn't say he loved people. He even loved people that were so wicked, their only redeeming character is the fact that they were people. Is that they were creatures, is that they were created by God. The fact that they had no redeeming merit. Besides the fact that they were briot, they were creations of God. Briot means creations. Bara, creations. Umekarav on the Torah, and he would draw them close to the Torah. Didn't bring Torah close to them. He brought them close to the Torah. Many things to discuss here. The point is, who is Aaron? When Hillel tells us, be of the disciples of Aaron. Who is Aaron? Ohev shalom, virodev shalom. He loved peace. He pursued peace. That is the definition of Aaron. A man who loved peace and was willing to not just love it, but to pursue it. And here is a critical point. Aaron didn't just say, I love peace. Many people love peace. Who doesn't like peace, right? Some people enjoy fights. Some people enjoy the drama and the politics and they get to watch from this. Some people thrive on that. Some people like it, but many of us, hopefully most of us, like peace. We like when everyone is happy and everything is calm and everyone is getting along with each other. We all love peace, but Aaron didn't just love peace. Aaron was pursuing peace. He literally ran around doing what he could to create peace. And therefore, because the core identity of Aaron is peace, love, kindness, therefore, in any circumstance of Aaron's life, it wasn't about him. It wasn't about how will I look, how will I feel, how will I sound, what will people think about me. It was always about what could I do to create more peace. What could I do to bring peace into the world? That was always the mindset of Aaron. And by the way, this trait, to be so full of love, to be so full of kindness, this trait, to be so full of kindness and love, is a trait that he instilled into, what's it himself? Okay, so this trait that he instilled, all of his children have that as well. All of his children. You want to see?
He was in the station when I saw him.
Okay. A little interruption there. So, all of Aaron's children, for all of future generations, they all inherited this ability to love other people and to give closeness to other people. So much so, if you look at the blessings that the priests give, we were in Shul this past week, right? On the Chag, we have the Birchas Kohen, the priestly blessing. What is a priestly blessing that the priests make before they give the blessing? That God commanded us to give a blessing, Levarech et Amo Yisrael, to bless his nation Israel. What's the next word? Ba'ahava, with love. With love. Only if a priest has love are they then able to give a blessing. If you don't have love, you can't give a blessing. So this midah, this character trait, to instill a sense of love and of kindness, and to be willing to go out of your way to be able to help somebody else, this is the character trait of Aaron that he not only lived with so deeply, that he was able to give to his children, to his grandchildren, for the rest of generations, a genetic disposition to being there for others, for caring for others, for helping others. That's the definition of Aaron. Yeah? It's easier said. Sometimes God gives you a way to actually do it in real life, right? To have love for every single one of God's creations. And this is Aaron. To have absolute love, that it wasn't about me. It was about how I could help somebody else. So now, let's go look at the stories of Aaron's life. At least the main ones. Where we find where the pivotal moments of his life, and see how in the moments of his life was not defined by what he would say, or what others would think, or how others would interpret it, but it was all about how I can help somebody. What's the first story of Aaron's life that we know? I mean, obviously when he was born, etc. The first pivotal story in Aaron's life, the first life-changing story of Aaron's life. Now, before the golden calf. The first pivotal moment that changes the destiny of Aaron. Correct. At the burning bush. The burning bush, God comes to Moshe. And God says to Moshe, go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go, right? You know the story of the burning bush. And what does Moshe say? No, thank you. I can't speak. I have a kvad peh, a kvad lashon. I stutter. I don't know how to talk. The Jews won't listen to me. Pharaoh won't listen to me. For days and days, Moshe and God are arguing. They're arguing. And God is trying to convince Moshe to go speak to Pharaoh. And he's, I can't. I don't have the ability. I can't talk, etc. The Jews won't listen. For days, they argue. Finally, what happens at the end? God starts to get angry at him, and God says, you got to go. So Moshe says to, before he gets angry, Moshe says to God, Shlach, let's read it inside. Here's the next text. Text number 3. We'll go back to sharing the screen for a second. This is from chapter 4 of the book of Exodus, verse 13. So finally Moshe says to God, I beseech you, O Lord, send now your message with whom you would send. What does whom you would send mean? On a simple level, the interpretation of this verse is that Moshe is asking God, please don't make me be your spokesman and be your prophet. You already have a spokesman. His name is Aharon. And until that point in history, any time that God wanted to communicate to the Jewish people, which God did, how would he communicate? Through Aharon. Aharon was a high priest. How do I know what? That Tishla.
In Egypt?
Yeah. Aharon was the prophet of the Jewish people. He was the prophet of the Jewish people. The dynasty from Levi went down to Aharon. And so Aharon was the prophet of the Jews. And so Moshe says to God, please don't make me be the new prophet and the new spokesman that goes to Pharaoh. You already have someone. Aharon. Shlach na bi'atishlach, please send Aharon instead. And that's when God gets angry at Moshe. Verse 14, and the Lord's wrath was kindled against Moses, and he said, is there not Aharon your brother the Levite? I know that he will surely speak. And behold, he is coming forth toward you. And when he sees you, he will rejoice in his heart. So he's answering, the Shlach na bi'atishlach is Aharon. And what God says back to him, I know about Aharon. I know your brother Aharon. I know who he is. He's your brother, and he is the prophet, and he will continue to speak. Don't worry, he's not losing his job. But now, he will speak as your messenger. And a few verses later, God says, you will speak, I'll make you as a prince over him. You will speak, and he will interpret for you to Pharaoh. But the point is, here's the point in this verse. Because what happens at this moment? God tells us that how will Aharon respond? How does Aharon respond? Read the end of the verse. God is saying to Moshe, when Aharon will see you, v'samach b'libay, he will rejoice in his heart. So what God tells Moshe. And by the way, that's actually exactly what happens. When Moshe and Aharon finally meet, and before they enter the land of Egypt, and Aharon sees his brother Moshe, what does he do? He hugs him, he kisses him, he says, you're the guy in charge. And for the rest of the story, Aharon is a very, very good interpreter, second in command, assistant, deputy, whatever word you want to use, to his younger brother Moshe. So this story, I understand, but this story is a pivotal, life-changing story in the life of Aharon. Aharon went from being the prophet of the Jewish people to becoming the second in command, being the second fiddle to his younger brother Moshe. And when that happens, he responds in a way of joy, love. The samach b'liba, he's rejoicing in his heart. If Aharon cared about me, what do you mean? I had the main role. I was a speaker before. Now you're delegating me to be a second, to interpret what he says. Before he didn't wait for Moshe, he spoke directly. If Aharon was looking for his own honor, his own glory, his own respect, so my respect, I want to be the prophet. There'd be a grudge. There'd be some feeling of animosity. Even if Aharon wouldn't fight against Moshe, because as Vivi said, God chose that Moshe should be the new prophet. But it's not just that he didn't fight or argue, that he accepted it with a half a heart or begrudgingly. His heart was happy for his brother. In Hebrew, we call that to be a mevater. To be mevater means to be happy for someone else, to give space for someone else. In Yiddish, you say "vergin sich." I'm happy for your success. I give up what I want for you. I'm happy for you to have it instead. It's a tremendous level of spiritual maturity. This is where Aharon was holding. This is the way Aharon responded. Which, by the way, Rashi on that verse tells us that the reason why God gave Aharon the breastplate that he wore on his chest with the 12 stones, right? He had the breastplate with the 12 stones. Why did he get it? Because his heart was so pure that he could be happy for his brother. Therefore, he was allowed to wear the breastplate over his heart because his heart was pure. It's beautiful. But the point is, we're looking here for the character. The character of Aharon, the meaning in the Bible of Aharon, is someone whose heart is so full of love for his brother, so full of love for the Jewish people, that when he hears that the redemption, the news of redemption is coming, not through him, through somebody else, but it's coming, there's no animosity, there's no jealousy, there's no feeling of something was taken from me. He's rejoicing in the joy of the fact that God has sent an agent of redemption, even though that agent is not him. Okay? It's a powerful story. This is a defining story in the life of Aaron. Being mevater, giving it all for his brother, because this is the redemption coming. So it's not about me, it's about the Jewish people. If God wants Moshe to be the shepherd of the Jewish people, to be the leader, the prince of the Jewish people, I gladly give it to you that the Jewish people should have a leader take them out of Egypt. What's the next pivotal story in the life of Aaron? Of course, you have the 10 plagues, and Aaron hits the water instead of Moshe. We know all that. What's the next pivotal moment in the life of Aaron? The next pivotal moment is the golden calf. This is a story that will change Aaron's future. God will punish him for it. He won't be allowed to enter the land of Israel as a result of this. This is a story that will have big implications in the life of Aaron. One second. Let's say, what's the story? What happened? The Jewish people come to Aaron. They say, we want the golden calf. Hur, the nephew of Aaron, starts to give them a sermon. How dare you? You're going to be killed. God will punish you. You're making an idol. And they stone him to death. What does Aaron do? What does Aaron do? Aaron, he tries to slow them down. Aaron tries to slow them down. So first Aaron says to them, okay, well, go to your wives. Very good, Marsha. Go to your wives and get their jewelry. Now Aaron, we're going to soon discover, knew a little bit about marriage counseling. So he understood the power of jewelry and women. So he knew that women don't give away their jewelry just so fast. So he says, go to your wives, talk to them, their jewelry, then come back and we'll have a meeting. We'll have a board meeting to make a design with an architect. Try to slow them down. Now that didn't work because the men were so eager to build this golden calf, to make this idol, that what happened? They took their own jewelry, that's right. They took their own jewelry, put it next thing you know, there's a pile of gold in front of Aaron right there. Forget the woman. Which is, side note, why today religious men don't wear jewelry and the women do, because the woman did not sin with their jewelry and the men did. So that's, okay. So that didn't work. So what does Aaron do next? Yeah, so what does he, you're right, he's trying to delay. So what does he do to delay? No one knows? He starts to build an altar. First, by the way, they put the gold into the fire, not him. They wrap it up in the cheret and they put it in. Well, different definitions what a cheret means. If they engraved it, if it was wrapped up in a blanket, he did it himself. But then Aaron says, "Let me build an altar." And what was Aaron thinking? The Torah tells us that Aaron said, "I'll build it very, very slowly. If I let them build it, chick, chock, chock, 5 minutes. This guy will bring the wood. This guy will bring a stone. This guy will bring a hammer. Next thing you know, there'll be an altar, and they can already worship the golden calf today. Instead of letting me do it, I'll do it very slowly. It won't be done today. I'll wait until tomorrow." So Aaron starts to build the altar for the golden calf himself. And then he says, Chag LaHashem Machar. Tomorrow will be a holiday for Hashem, hoping and praying and hoping that by then Moshe will have already come down from the mountain. And therefore, because Moshe will have come down from the mountain, it will indeed be a holiday for Hashem and not for the people, and not for the golden calf. And therefore, in Aaron's mind, as he was building the golden calf, his intentions was for God. His intentions were that Moshe would come down the mountain early enough to stop them from worshiping the idol, and then this altar that he built will be an altar for God. What ends up happening is that the people wake up very early in the morning, and they're going, the Yetzer Hara, it's only hard to get out of bed in the morning when the Yetzer Hara is fighting you. You know, when you have a little voice inside saying, sleep in, it's too cold, you're too tired, that's what's hard to get out of bed. When the Yetzer Hara wants you to wake up, there's no one fighting the Yetzer Hara. Side note, just so in the head of the story, there was a boy, he would later grow to become a famous rabbi, I forgot his name off the top of my head. So one day he slept in, he didn't go to shul in the morning. Didn't go to shul, he was a young boy. So his father came and says, what happened? You didn't come to shul. So he said, I wanted to go to shul, but my Yetzer Hara got up early in the morning, got up before me, and when I wanted to get out of bed, my Yetzer Hara was convincing me to stay in bed, not to get out of bed, so my Yetzer Hara convinced me to stay in bed. So his father tells him, You should learn from your Yetzer Hara. Just like a Yetzer Hara didn't stay in bed in the morning, but he got out of bed to do his job to keep you in bed, you should have gotten out of bed to do your job and go pray and show. So the young boy tells his father, yeah, but the Yetzer Hara doesn't have a Yetzer Hara stopping him from getting out of bed. You understand? So the point is, the morning of the golden calf, there was no Yetzer Hara keeping the Jews in bed that day. So they got up really, really early, and they right away ran to go to worship the idol, and they were already worshiping it when Moshe came down the mountain, etc. And we know that in the story. Moshe comes down the mountain, he's very angry, he says to Aaron, what did the people do to you that they made you build the golden calf? He did. He did. Why did he do it? Aaron, he did. Aaron himself built the altar for the golden calf. Himself, with his own hands. Didn't just like stay on the sidelines and mix out of it and like, disappear for a few hours to go. He did it. Well, that's actually, you're not listening. The actual calf came out of the fire. The altar for the golden calf was built by Aaron himself with his own hands. Why does he do it? Because Aaron wanted to take responsibility to do anything he could to try and save the Jewish people from their own sin. And so Aaron said, I'm going to stretch out my neck on the line. I'm going to take a tremendous risk. I'm going to do something that might backfire tremendously, which it did, but I'm going to take a risk. Because maybe by me doing this myself, instead of allowing the Jews to build the altar quickly, maybe I can slow things down long enough until Moshe comes down the mountain. Maybe my actions will save the Jewish people from what will be one of the worst things to ever happen to us in all of our history. Unfortunately, he's not successful. But his intentions are as noble and as pure as could be. His intentions are to take responsibility, to do, not to speak, to do, to try and save the Jewish people from themselves. Yeah.
So if his intentions are so noble, why does he get punished for it?
First of all, in Judaism, we don't judge you by your intentions. You judge by your actions. You judge by your actions. So you can have all the beautiful intentions in the world. If you don't do the mitzvah, you didn't do the mitzvah. And if on the other thing, what's more important? Have intentions to give charity, or a guy actually wrote the check, but I did it for...
He was judged by his actions.
Correct. You're right. He was judged by his actions. And Aaron knew that he may be misjudged, negatively judged, looked down upon as a result of the way he would behave. And yet, it wasn't about him. If it's, I care about me, so I think, how will you interpret my actions? How will you, judge me and think about me? Aaron didn't care what people would think about him. It wasn't about him. So the fact that someone, Moshe, might come down the mountain and say, what, you're the one that built the altar? Sugar Givar, that you crazy building an altar for an idol? He didn't care about that. Because to him, it wasn't about him. It was pure for his people. He loved his people so much, he was willing to take a tremendous risk to do something that might hurt him. That's how much he loved the Jewish people. Understand? That's love. That's love. That I'm willing to do for my people, not to speak, not to argue, not to do what I can to try and save them from themselves. Okay? The next story we know about Aaron, it's not a pivotal one-moment story, but it's in some ways a defining life of Aaron, besides for serving in the Beis HaMikdash, which is this week's Torah reading, which is why we're talking about Aaron today. Besides for that, Aaron was a man who was committed to bringing peace between people. As we already read the Mishnah, what did he do? He loved peace. He pursued peace. He did everything he could to bring people closer. We're told that when Aaron would see a couple fighting, he would go and personally go spend time talking to each side, trying to convince the other side to say sorry, to make up. Chaim and Beryl were in a fight. Jack and Jill were in a fight. You go to Jack and say, Jack, I spoke to Jill. She came to me. She feels terrible about what happened last night, and she regrets it. She really, really wants to say sorry to you. She really wants to make up, but she's too embarrassed. Her pride won't let her, say sorry. But she really feels bad. Then you go to Jill. You say to Jill, Jack really, really feels terrible about what happened. He feels so miserable. He just doesn't have the ability to come over to you. And then Jack and Jill would meet, and each one thought that the other one was too embarrassed to apologize, but really, really they wanted to apologize. And so they would make up, they would hug, each one thought the other one was sorry. and that's all that matters for their pride and for their ego. And they would hug and kiss and make up, and shalom al Yisrael, peace on the Jewish people. And Aaron saved many, many marriages that way. Aaron saved many, many friendships that way. Each time they were fighting, here he spoke. What he spoke wasn't necessarily even 100% technically accurate. Of course, in the spirit it was accurate, but not technically accurate. And yet, he was able to save marriages. He was able to cause that children were born as a result of his intercession and his mingling into a fight in a marriage to help bring, not to try to get involved and see like who's right, who's wrong, and you got involved to help.
Also, Miriam was like that because she brought her parents together.
Yeah, but we don't find in the life of Miriam that she was active in bringing couples together. She did it for her parents, that's her own family.
6 years old, I think
But that's something else. Something else. Aaron dedicated his life to other people, to strangers, to people that weren't strangers. I mean, he was the Kohen Gadol. He knew them. But he dedicated his life. He knew it was an issue between two people. He spent the time. And so, of course, he spoke. But it's not about what he said or what he spoke. He said this word, he said that word. When you're counseling, it's not what you say. It's how you listen, how you look at the person and make eye contact, right? It's about the connection and helping each side be able to communicate to the other. Aaron spent the time. It takes a lot of time to do counseling, a lot of time, a lot of patience. And Aaron did it because he loved these people. And therefore, what happens at the end of Aaron's life? The end of Aaron's life, what happens? Says the Torah. Here's what happens. I'm going to share my screen, the last text. This is from Bamidbar. When Moshe passed away, chapter 20. When Aaron passed away. It's beautiful how he passed away. You know the story how he passed away? Before I even read this, I'll just spend a minute. Before he passed away, Moshe was told by God to bring him up to the top of the mountain called Har Hahar. Like a cave on top of a mountain. And there they went in, and he went with his son Elazar. And Aaron, he said to Aaron, take off your breastplate, take off your clothing. He dressed Aaron's son Elazar in the presence of Aaron. So Aaron saw how his son was wearing his clothing. And then after Aaron was wearing his clothing, Elazar was wearing his clothing. So then after Aaron was wearing the clothing, after Elazar was wearing the clothing of Aaron, then he told him to lie down on the bed. And he said, close your eyes, put your hands over your, cross your hands, whatever. And he died by the kiss of God. And when Moshe saw how Aaron died by the kiss of God, so peaceful, he prayed to God that the same thing should be with him as well. He should also be able to see to die that way. But what's the point? What happens at the end of his life? So Aaron goes up the mountain, he passes away, and Moshe comes back down the mountain with Elazar, the son of Aaron, wearing the clothing of Aaron the high priest, but no Aaron, right? Where's Aaron? What happened to him? He died. Says the verse, chapter 20, verse 29, the whole congregation saw that Aaron expired. Vayifku as Aaron, and they mourned for Aaron, Kol Beis Yisrael. The entire house of Israel wept for Aaron 30 days. Kol Beis Yisrael. What does Kol Beis Yisrael mean? All of the house of Israel. It says to us Rashi, what does the entire house of Israel mean? Both the men and the women. For Aaron had pursued peace. He promoted love between disputing parties and between man and wife. Understand? This is the story of Aaron. He brought peace between different people who were fighting with each other. He brought peace between man and his wife. And therefore, as a result of that, when he died, everyone mourned for him. When Moshe died, it doesn't say all of Israel mourned for him. It says that the men mourned for him. Moshe was a great teacher. Moshe was a great rabbi. Moshe inspired the Jewish people. So what happened? Those that were inspired mourned for him. But when Aaron died, everyone was mourning.
Can we cry 30 days?
Yeah, shloshim.
I saw somewhere that we're not allowed to cry.
Yes, we're allowed to cry. You're not supposed to cry for his cry, but mourning 30 days. Understand?
Isn't that where we get the 30 days from?
Yeah, shloshim. I don't know if we get it. This is the point. This is the point. Aaron created the greatest impact on all of the Jewish people. Much more than anybody else. Much more than anybody else. Because Aaron's life was not about what he said. Aaron's life was about what he did. And therefore, the impact he had was much greater. The impact he had was much greater. Because it wasn't just when I give you a speech, whatever, listen, I listen, it has an impact, it inspires. But doing, action, when you do for someone, that's tangible. Tangible care is the most enduring and the most lasting.
Without waving.
Yes. So now I'm going to show you a story. I think I have a good story to share on this idea. And there's many stories about about the idea of being connected to someone and giving to them in the way of not speaking, but just doing. No speeches, no fanfare, no hoo-ha. Just to do for someone, just because I care about you and I love you, so I'm going to do for you even though no one will know that I'm doing for you. That's Aaron, right? Some people might even misinterpret Aaron's actions. But Aaron was willing to do anything to help the Jewish people. So I think what's a good story that can bring out this idea? And I'll show you a story not that I heard, but a story that I actually witnessed with my own eyes. Okay? So it's a personal story. Although, to be honest, at the time that I witnessed the story happening, I did not understand what I was witnessing. Because the person that was doing this kindness to somebody else was so discreet about what they were doing that even though I was there, I saw part of it, I had no idea what I was seeing. Who am I talking about? The Shliach to India, Gabi Holtzberg, Hashem Yimkim Dam, of God should avenge his blood, who was murdered by terrorists in India in Mumbai in 2008. So I had the merit, me and my cousin Yossi Gansberg, we went on America Shlichus, which is like a Chabad Peace Corps, in the summer of 2006. We went to India for a month to help start what eventually became now the full-time, well, it was until COVID. It's not, unfortunately, didn't survive COVID. First full-time Chabad in Bangalore, India. Bangalore, India. It's a whole story, whatever. So we were in South Africa for the year in Yeshiva. We went from South Africa, went to Bangalore. We were there for a full month, 30 days. We had a visa for 30 days. We were there for 30 days in India. Therefore, starting a community there. And then what happened? Many stories. But we flew into Mumbai on a Thursday night. We spent Shabbos in Mumbai together with Gabi and Rifki Holtzberg, God should avenge their blood. Sunday morning, we flew from there to Bangalore, a 2-hour flight. And in Bangalore until we left, we flew out of Delhi, whatever. So we spent Shabbos in Mumbai with Rabbi Holtzberg. Friday afternoon, we went around with him to all the hostels, like where the backpackers stay, all the Israeli backpackers and teenagers that are there. So we went around, inviting for Friday night dinner, for Shabbat dinner, the Israelis that are staying in the different hostels and whatever. Put on tefillin with them. Special experience. Friday night is a beautiful dinner. Friday night he has a whole bunch of people, whoever's visiting India is there, including my cousin, Yossi Gansberg. His father is a diamond merchant. That's why he has connections in India. He does business. He would travel to India 2-3 times a year. So he actually surprised us. We didn't know when we landed in the airport Thursday night. We got through everything, the whole chaos there. Came to the Chabad house. Who was there waiting for us? His father was there. Special treat. He spent Shabbos with us in India, in Mumbai. Shabbos afternoon, we're sitting having Shabbos lunch. True story, I was there. Having Shabbos lunch. Now, Friday night was a big Friday night. All the guests and the Israelis and the backpackers. Shabbos lunch. Who's still after the kid? It's a small crowd of Shabbos day. Whoever's sitting on the table. 20 people. It's like whoever was in the shul in the morning. Like it's all in the same house. It's one building. The building was attacked. So it's upstairs. So it's one house. So everyone's sitting having lunch, and all of a sudden, Indian police come in. They barge in, no knocking, and they start interrogating him. And they're searching the house. They search the whole house, all the rooms, and they don't find what they're looking for. And they were looking for a girl. I found out later, a girl that had been in prison, a Jewish Israeli girl, Indian Israeli girl that had been arrested for drugs and was in an Indian prison. Now, being in an Indian prison is literally life-threatening. The sanitary conditions in the prison and the sanitary conditions in the streets is worse than whatever. The prison, I'm afraid to even imagine what they look like. I see the restaurants are disgusting. Like the prisons are, and it's not overcrowded. There's dangerous people there, and there's no control. It's very, very dangerous. For a person to be in a prison in India is literally Sakanas nefashos. No question about it. So there was an Israeli girl that was in prison. And somehow she escaped prison. And now the police are looking for her. Where are they looking for her? In Gavi Holtzberg's house. Gavi Holtzberg's house. Now, I didn't know what this was happening in. All I know is they searched the whole house. This is in the middle of the Shabbos lunch. We're there. They searched the house. And Gavi Holtzberg is as cool as a cucumber. Like, he made it like nothing was going on. Nothing was going on. Like, you barely realized the meal was happening. There were guests there, whatever. They posted a guard by the door of the Chabad house that no one could leave and no one could... Well, no, not only that. Oh, I forgot one thing. The mother of this girl had flown in from Israel to India when her daughter had been arrested. So the mother was in India, and she was in the Chabad house. She was in the Chabad house, the mother, not the girl, the mother. So they thought that maybe she's going to come to her mother. So now the mother was there, and the mother was afraid to leave. The mother was afraid to go back to her hotel. She wasn't sleeping in the Chabad house. She had a hotel, the mother. But now that the police are there, and the police are guarding the house, and the police think that where's the girl going to go to? The mother or to the rabbi. So she's afraid if she leaves, they might arrest her to interrogate her and to question where's her daughter. So she was afraid to leave the Chabad house and be on her own without Rabbi Hotel to protect her. So she slept on the couch in the Chabad house Saturday night. She was afraid to leave. And they had a guard outside the Chabad house all night, like a house arrest, trying to look for this girl. Now, I found out afterwards. So I'm like asking what's going on, and like Beryl Gansberg, my cousin's father, like probably like later, like nothing. Later he told us that the phones were tapped. Friday, Gabi Holtzberg realized he saw people outside by the phones, like doing something on the phone wires, and he already realized Friday he was suspicious that his phone was being tapped. This is India. Later, 2 years, and that's all I saw the story then. She stayed in the Chabad house, and then Sunday morning already, they got a phone call from Israel that the daughter got into Israel. She didn't go to the Chabad house with her mother. She went straight to the airport. She was in Israel. She was safe, and then the mother already was fine to go, and she flew back to Israel. That was all I knew about the story. That's all I knew. Years later, I hear another story about an Israeli that was in prison, also for drugs. You know, the Israelis go, they're looking for ways to make money in India, and the easy way to make money is drugs. So he got arrested, ended up in prison, and all of a sudden, he doesn't know what's going to be with him. He had a long sentence, and all of a sudden, a rabbi he never met before appears in the prison, and he says to him, whatever his name is, he says, "Here is money. I already bribed the guard to let you out." I'm saying a story, whatever. This is what Chabad saves lives, literally. The guard is already bribed. You're going to walk out with me. Here's a plane ticket. There's a plane leaving to Israel in 3 hours, whatever it is. Here's a ticket. Here's a whatever you would think. Here's some cash to get onto the thing. You're going to go outside, take a taxi, go straight to the airport. Don't stop. Don't go home. Don't get out of Israel. Don't ever come back to India ever again in your life. Understand? And he came to Israel, and there's a whole story. Basically, there was a Chabad rabbi that needed help. He became a contractor, and he did the work for this rabbi totally free as his way of repaying Gabi Holtzberg for having saved his life in this Indian prison. Then, when I heard this story, I began to understand what it means to do kindness for somebody without not saying, not speaking, not talking, not looking for fanfare, just for the sake of doing the mitzvah. Because here, the Indian police knew this Rabbi Holtzberg is smuggling Jews that are stuck in prison, giving them money, getting the tickets, getting them out of the country. The mother knows that. The mother is hiding in the Chabad house. The police know that. He's having a Shabbos meal, like nothing. He's not afraid of the fact that who knows they'll come. They can arrest him. They can interrogate him. He's having a Shabbos meal. In the meantime, this kid is traveling to Israel, got there safe and sound, survived, and that's all that mattered. No speaking, no talking, no pictures in the newspaper, no email campaign, nothing. Quiet. I care about you so much. I'm going to do for you. I'm going to help you. No one will know. No one will see. But it's not about me. That's Aharon. Aharon is how much he can love somebody in a way that I love you for you. What will I do for you? This is a lesson for us. What's a lesson for us? Lesson for us is that, we're all, by human nature, we care about ourselves. It's part of being a human being is you have a certain sense of care for self. But what we learn from Aaron is Aaron put others before himself. Not just he put others before himself. There was no, how will I look? How will people interpret my actions for this person? How will people think? It was all about, what can I do for somebody else? And that has to be the lesson we take from Aaron. To be Ohev Shalom, to be people who love peace, to be people who don't just love peace, but who pursue peace. To pursue peace means that we work for it. We put our neck on the line. We invest time. We invest effort. We invest money to give money for other people, to give them our resources, to give them our things that we have to help somebody else, do everything we can. And even for people who are in the category of briot, of creatures. They're just creatures. And yet we love them and we do for them, not what we say, not what we preach, what we do. This defines the true Ava, the true love that Aaron had. Okay? That's the story, my friends. Laila Tov. Laila Tov. I'll see you in the comments on Facebook. If you're watching, say good evening. And next week, same time, same place. Bezrat Hashem.